If you're looking to pay for college, there's a number of different accounts that you can actually use to help you pay. You're probably familiar with the most popular account, the 529 plan. The 529 plan has been around for a number of years and is typically going to be issued by the state of your residence, but it can be issued by any state. However, in recent years, it's become more popular to be paying for college and saving for college from a Roth IRA. Today, we're going to talk about why we think that the 529 plan is a better way to pay than the Roth IRA would be. Let's unpack it. What's going on, everybody? I'm Danny Sinowitz, the college dude. If you haven't yet, feel free to check out my channel. Make sure that you subscribe and like this page. Give it a share if you found it to be useful. Also, be on the lookout for the course that's going to be coming out in the coming weeks that is going to go through how to best pay for college. We're going to release it at a super low price as well, only $47, and you'll be able to find everything from financial aid to savings accounts like we're actually talking about today a little bit. You'll also find out the ways that you should be budgeting and paying for school. And then lastly, we'll cover loans and different ways in which you can save. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for some more information on that. Check out the website, www.thecollegedude, in order to find more information there. So let's talk about the difference between the Roth IRA and the 529 plan when it comes to actually saving and paying for college. Let's start with the Roth IRA. You may be familiar with it. It is one of the most popular ways in which to save, and it can offer some tremendous tax benefits specifically for retirement. But you may not be aware there are some benefits for higher education that are out there as well. So let's start with the Roth IRA Basics. In terms of taxes, you do not get a federal tax deduction for any contributions to a Roth IRA. However, much like your 401k you may be familiar with, much like a traditional IRA, one factor and one commonality that they all share is that they grow tax deferred. So any capital gains, dividends, interest that accrues throughout the tax year, you don't have to report that on a 1099 or pay any taxes that year. It grows tax deferred. So the difference between the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA, which you're probably familiar with, is that the Roth IRA can be withdrawn completely federal tax-free if it's used for a qualifying expense. So the qualifying expenses usually are going to be after 5 years and reaching the age 59 and a half, which means that these types of plans can be awesome ways to save for retirement. Assuming you've reached the criteria to actually be able to make a qualified withdrawal from a Roth IRA, it doesn't show up on the tax return, and it can be something that's very powerful to implement within a financial plan, specifically a retirement plan. Some of the downsides of this is that there are contribution limits, so it's subject to whatever the contribution limit is that the IRS allows for that given year. So for 2023, if you are under the age of 50, the max limit is $6,500 that you can contribute. If you're over the age of 50, you can contribute up to $7,500. Just keep in mind, though, too, that income has to be earned income. It can't be from a passive source or something like Social Security. It does need to be earned income that you have. So it's whichever the greater of the two. The $6,500 is the max limit, or earned income. And if all you have is $2,000 of earned income that year, the max that you're able to contribute is $2,000. In terms of some of the investment options, though, within a Roth IRA, they can be very expansive. You can invest in just about anything when it comes to a Roth IRA. You should be targeting low-cost funds if you're going to be investing in the market or in things like mutual funds or ETFs. But just know that you can invest in just about anything when it comes to actually investing inside of a Roth IRA. As we discussed, this can be a very powerful tool come retirement because it can allow you, again, to take distributions without actually having to report any of the distributions as taxable income. Inside of a 529 plan, there are some differences compared to the Roth IRA. To start, the investment opportunities and the investment allocations usually are not quite as expansive as they would be inside something like a Roth IRA. Usually what's going to happen is you have so many funds in which you can choose from, or depending on the type of state plan that you're through, there are going to be some models that you could choose from. They could range from more conservative all the way up to very aggressive allocations. Also, what you may find is they have what's called target-based funds inside there. So similar to how retirement plans work with target-based funds, some 529 plans actually have target-based funds based on your child's age. So as he or she gets closer into college and then is enrolled in college, the account's going to get more and more conservative. One of the other benefits of the 529 plan is you can also access 529 growth tax-free if it's used for a qualifying education expense. The IRS defines what a 529 is considered in terms of a qualifying education expense. If you read IRS publication 970, you'll be able to see a full list of examples in there. So for example, things like tuition, room and board, books, equipment, all those things, as long as they fall under the definition of those types of criteria, a 529 can be utilized for. Something that a 529 can offer, depending on your state of residence and your criteria as a taxpayer, as a state taxpayer, you may be able to get a state income tax deduction based on the type of plan that you go through. But you want to be aware there are certain states that only allow the state tax deduction if you invest in that specific state. So understand how your state plan works, understand if you're even paying a state income tax to begin with, and assuming that you could be eligible for a state income tax deduction if you contribute to your state plan. But understand the rules and regulations of each state's plan and your state of residence to find out if you qualify. As a result of some of these features, the 529 plan can be an awesome tool to save for college. Something you must be aware of, though, is if you take a non-qualified distribution or one that does not count as a qualifying education expense, you could be subject not only to a 10% penalty, you could also be subject to taxable interest inside the actual distribution. So what's important to understand with that is if you take the distribution, you want to do your best to make sure that it covers a qualifying education expense. The last thing to understand is that these accounts typically are very flexible. Usually there is not going to be any type of income limit, nor is there going to be a contribution limit other than ones being very, very high depending on the state of residence. But just make sure you're familiar with your state's plan and how it works to have a better understanding. So let's actually talk through the pros and cons of Roth IRAs versus 529 plans when it comes to actually paying for college. Let's start by covering a universal rule with the Roth IRA. So you may not be aware, but you can actually take out contributions from your Roth IRA at any time, and that's returned income tax-free and penalty-free. That's because you're funding it with after-tax dollars. You can take it back out without any types of income taxes or any types of penalties. That's usually done before the standard retirement age of 59 and a half, like you have inside of other accounts, such as a 401k or a traditional IRA. Something that you may not know, though, is that 10% penalty if you are taking it out for a qualified education expense, again, which is covered in the IRS publication 970, is that you can actually waive that 10% penalty. Therefore, you are not subject to what would be otherwise a penalty on any types of earnings beyond just the contributions. If you have a Roth IRA as an asset, you do not need to list that on the free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as the FAFSA. If you don't have to list that as an asset on the FAFSA, you may be able to actually lower your student aid index. And if you have a lower student aid index, it's possible that you could be eligible for more federal and potentially some institutional aid. So depending on the types of accounts that you have, it could be beneficial when it comes to financial aid. Compare that to the 529 plan. If it's a parent-owned 529 plan, parents do have to list that as an asset on the FAFSA. So that's one of the advantages that a Roth IRA could have over a 529 plan when it comes to saving between these two accounts for college. Some of the downsides, though, of the Roth IRA when it comes to college. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that the growth inside the Roth IRA would not be taxable if it were to be taken out as a retirement qualified distribution. So after you reach the age of 59 and a half and you've covered all the other criteria in which you can have a penalty-free and a tax-free withdrawal, the Roth IRA can be an awesome tool to use in retirement. If you're using it for education, again, you can take those contributions out penalty and income tax-free, but the interest would be taxable as income, thus in some ways defeating the actual purpose of investing inside of a Roth. Another major downside of the Roth IRA is that if you're taking it out for college expenses, you're cutting off what can be one of the most powerful tools at your disposal, which is long-term growth and compounding interest. If you're taking out the Roth IRA dollars to pay for college, you're taking them out at the expense of future retirement earnings. If you let the accounts continue to grow, you could be sitting on a greater pile of cash come retirement, thus a higher amount that you're able to distribute from. But if you're taking those out in college, you really can't then replenish those dollars. Once they're used up and spent, they're spent. Another potential downside of the Roth IRA for college is that if you're taking these out, both the contributions and the interest would need to be reported on the FAFSA 2 years after you take those out. So what you need to understand is that even though it may not be taxable income, it's still considered income as far as the FAFSA is concerned. If the FAFSA considers it income, just like we talked about earlier, it could raise that student aid index, thus leaving you less likely to be eligible for both federal and institutional aid. While it's not perfect, the 529 plan can offer many other benefits compared to the Roth IRA for families that are looking to achieve that goal. It can offer you tax deferral. It can actually offer you tax-free withdrawals. And one of the other things that you need to be aware of are the many ways in which the 529 plans have actually become more flexible through the years. So what you can do within a 529 plan is if you have unused dollars in a 529 plan for a child, rather than just taking the penalty hit by doing a distribution, you should first consider if you're able to A, pay off qualified student loans with the balance. You're able to pay off up to $10,000 of an eligible student loan in your lifetime from the 529 plan. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can actually transfer some of these to a beneficiary. There's a number of different people that you can actually transfer the remaining balance to penalty-free. If you make the penalty-free transfer, you're then able to, again, utilize that 529 without having to pay the penalty. Another thing that you can also do is you can use qualified tuition of K through 12 expenses within a 529 plan. So if you're going to a private school and there are tuition expenses there, if you're between the grades of K through 12, you can actually utilize a 529 plan to pay for some of those expenses. Recently, thanks to the Secure Act 2.0, you can also transfer unused 529 dollars to a Roth IRA, where you can actually have both of these accounts working in conjunction with each other rather than pitting one against the other. Which leads us to the takeaway point here. It's not a matter of one product being better than another necessarily. It's part of the actual strategy. 529 plans are geared and designed towards education. Roth IRAs are geared and designed towards retirement. But you're able to utilize both of these accounts potentially to serve the same purpose, which is pay the minimal amount in taxes that's humanly possible. You always want to pay what's really legally required, but you never want to have to pay more if you don't have to. By having a sound strategy and making sure that your plan is set properly for success, you're able to then take these accounts and utilize them the right way to pay for schooling and also to finance retirement. As always, the information here that's presented is meant to be educational and general in nature only. If you have specific questions about your plan, whether it be related to college or retirement, make sure you're reaching out to your financial planner, to your CPA, to your tax attorney, and anybody else who's helping you to actually plan for college and for retirement. I thank you for watching. Again, feel free to subscribe to this channel, like this page, and share this video if you found it useful. Until next time.